seated, please. Mazel tov, everyone. And now, as is our custom on this Shabbat, when the new president comes into her position, or his position, we learn a little Torah and a little bit about Holy Blossom and a little bit about our new leadership. It's our pleasure. Avra Rosen, please teach us.
Earlier this month, we read from Parsha Lech Lecha, where God said to Avram, "Go forth from your native land, from your father's house, to the land I will show you." What was it about Avram that impelled God to choose him? And by analogy, why did this congregation choose me, Avra, named after my grandfather, Avraham, to lead this incredible institution? Rabbi Splansky, in her inspiring Rosh Hashanah sermon about anti-Semitism, urged us to know your story and to tell your story. Indulge me as I tell you mine. I am fifth-generation Canadian on my father's side, born and raised in Montreal. My mother was a first-generation Canadian, raised in Kemptville, a small town outside of Ottawa with 2,000 people, few Jews, and no synagogue. I grew up in a conservative synagogue in Montreal, moved with my family to Toronto in 1978, graduated from law school in 1985. The same year, I came as a guest to High Holy Day services at Holy Blossom. Hearing Rabbi Plout's sermon, and when he started off asking those in the top row in the back if they could hear him, I was hooked. I joined Holy Blossom and have been a member ever since. My husband, Mark, and I were married here. Our daughters were named here, had their bat mitzvahs here, and we will soon have our first daughter's wedding here. When Sarah was a toddler, we began attending Tot Shabbat and the family Shabbaton weekends that were then at Camp Shalom. Somehow, before I knew it, I was chair of family programming, I was nominated to the board, I became chair of the Department of Membership, I was treasurer and officer, and in that time, I had my adult bat mitzvah in 1998, and I was nominated by Holy Blossom and accepted to the Wexner Heritage Foundation, an American Jewish leadership program. Throughout my commitments to Holy Blossom, I maintained a very busy family law practice. But when it and my trial commitments became too demanding, together with my family responsibilities, I took a short break from Holy Blossom, but not a complete break from Jewish community service. I tried something different. I became co-chair of the Lawyers Division at UJA and later vice chair of Major Gifts. But fundraising and making phone calls wasn't my thing. I, Raquel, am also a doer. I like to brainstorm, to make palpable changes, and implement them. I stepped away from Jewish community service until my mother passed away unexpectedly in the summer of 2010. My father and I were lost. We came to Holy Blossom for comfort, and for the first time I attended Shachri services. During Shloshim, I came both morning and night, looking to my community for support, still not fully comprehending the loss of my mother. And while not planned, those 30 days evolved into 11 months, and the unexpected bond with those congregants who are also in mourning with me and who are still my close friends to this day. And that got me back at Holy Blossom. I became a gabbai. I was nominated to the board. And for the last 5 years, I have been the chair and the vice president of the Department of Administration. I opened my copy of Rabbi Plout's Torah commentary, which this congregation had gifted to me on becoming an adult bat mitzvah, to read and study Parshat Toldot in preparation to speak to you today. I had forgotten that Rabbi Plout had inscribed the following to me: for Avra Rosen, with every good wish, W.G. Plout. I like to think that Rabbi Plout of blessed memory saw something in me back in 1998 that I did not, and that he knew that one day I would go forth and lead this incredible synagogue and community and be here to tell you my story. Thanks to our congregant Lisa Taylor, I recently participated in an online questionnaire to understand my strengths and weaknesses as an individual and to take those results and conclusions and create better working relationships with congregants, board members, clergy, and staff. When I was answering those questions from a personal perspective, because of course I followed the instructions literally, it was hard not to separate the lawyer from me, from the leader in me, from the mother in me, from the wife in me. And not surprisingly, when I approached my study of today's Torah portion, Parsha Toldot, I wore both my professional hat as a family law lawyer and my leadership hat as your president. What do I mean by that? In the beginning of Toldot, Rebecca, who had been barren, becomes pregnant. It was a difficult pregnancy, and she went to inquire of the Lord. The explanation she received was that she was carrying twins who were struggling in her womb. As the Torah says, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Eventually, the twins are born, first Esau, followed by Jacob. Mindful of the prophecy she had received, Rebecca favors the younger son, Jacob. Years later, she persuades Jacob to impersonate his brother Esau and thereby take for himself the blessing that his father Isaac had intended for Esau. Nachmanides, a 13th century Jewish scholar and rabbi, asked, why is it that Rebecca simply couldn't reveal to her husband the prophecy that had been given to her when she was pregnant? Had Rebecca told Isaac the prophetic message she received, which presumably implied that the younger son would be the greater and more deserving of the father's blessing, the Ramban suggests that there would never have been the need for deception, and the succeeding hostility between the 2 brothers would never have come to fruition. But from my family law lens, I would say telling her husband would have forced Rebecca to admit that she had kept Isaac in ignorance about the prophecy all those years their children were growing up. Some might say this is material non-disclosure. What I found interesting is, except for one brief comment that is said by Rebecca to Isaac at the very end of Parsha Toldot, there are no verbal exchanges recorded in the Torah between these 2 spouses. In contrast, we see conversations and interactions between Abraham and Sarah, and later Jacob and his wives. Many commentators suggest that an underlying problem that brought about the need for subterfuge was a lack of communication between husband and wife. And that's why I am in business. So how does this lack of communication relate to the very impressive board of directors that we installed today? According to Lee Froshheiser, an American consultant and speaker in business management and executive development, the key to great leadership is clear communication. He teaches that leaders and their teams must learn how to communicate effectively so that teams can complete their projects successfully. He advocates that effective communication enables organizations to achieve success and growth. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who is the chief Orthodox rabbi of the United Kingdom for over 20 years, in his commentary on Toldot, put it another way. Any leader, from a parent to a CEO, must set as his task or her task good, strong, honest, open communication. That is what makes families, teams, and corporate cultures healthy. Everyone must know their overall aims are as a team, what their specific role is, what responsibilities they carry, and what values and behaviors they are expected to exemplify. Like many past presidents before me, I intend to maintain a culture in which honest, open, respectful communication takes place, and that involves not just speaking, but also listening. Returning to Parshat Toldot, wearing my other hat, my leadership hat, we see strong female leadership in the Torah reading. Rebecca thwarts her husband's efforts to bless Esau. In ancient Hebrew tribes, the blessing meant the handing over of legal power to a successor, a more valuable gift than any amount of property. The person who received the blessing had authority over the whole clan, even over people who were older than himself, a modern-day president of a synagogue. The Torah portrays an assertive Rebecca. While Parshat Toldot begins with Isaac, it focuses heavily on Rebecca, who is the more active member of the family. She is the one who runs the family. It is Rebecca who undertakes the task of determining the destiny of God's blessing. We see that the Torah acknowledges and presents Rebecca as a figure without whom the covenant will not continue properly, the necessary link between Abraham's blessing and Jacob's. In his work, Certain People of the Book, Maurice Samuel describes Rebecca as the manager who was chosen to guard Isaac in the fulfillment of the destiny. It was thanks to Rebecca, Samuel argues, that the future of the Jewish people rested in the hands of Jacob, who by temperament was best prepared for the role. She saw the uniqueness of her sons. As Maurice Samuel so aptly put it, what had to get done, got done. I, too, will get things done for Holy Blossom Temple. To prepare for my new role, I read books and articles about leadership and how leadership positions outside of a synagogue community are much different from congregational leadership. I have learned that being your president is holy and sacred work. Chapter 2, verse 2 of Pirkei Avot says the following: "Let all who work for the congregation do so for the sake of heaven." When the board of directors work with each other and with our professional partners and staff at Holy Blossom, sharing responsibilities and obligations, we strengthen this congregation. That is what is known as a sacred partnership. The Union for Reform Judaism defines sacred partnerships as being built and nurtured through the Jewish values of mutual respect, honesty, trust, listening and communication, transparency, confidentiality, flexibility, and reflection. I committed to being your president, recognizing my professional and personal responsibilities on the basis that just as we have been transformative in our new spaces, that it was time to look inside and focus on our renewal of spirit and be visionary as to where we want to be in the next 5 years and start having those important and even difficult discussions. To date, we have undertaken the following. Darren Sukonik, our Vice President of Membership, is chairing a strategic plan committee. I look forward to having the committee's report presented to the congregation before I complete my year as president. Joan Garson, when she finishes the 5 to Finish campaign, will be chairing a financial planning and development task force, which will have a hard look at our finances and the financial sustainability of the synagogue. A review and update of all our policies is being undertaken by Ellen Cole and Dylan Astor, so that all policies can be transparent and available to both staff and the congregants in a new policy manual. And we are working on the creation of a leadership development program that not only identifies potential leaders, but one that provides our next leaders with the necessary skills to take on leadership roles at Holy Blossom. In addition to being strategic in my approach as your president, I intend to lead by example. When you lead by example, you create a picture of what's possible and for others to follow you. That is why, as we enter the final stretch of our 5 to Finish campaign, Mark and I have increased our renewal gift by 20%. Admittedly, we are going to pay that over 3 years, because any gift must not only be within your means, but achievable. As I look at the congregation and my fellow board members, I ask you to consider joining me in increasing the generous gifts you have made to date by 20%, especially now when we have 3 major donors who are matching those gifts. Finally, I want to be an approachable president, a visible president. I will do my best to be here at services throughout the week, as well as a variety of programs, recognizing I can't be everywhere. I will be here at Holy Blossom most Wednesday afternoons in the Schwartz-Reisman atrium, sitting outside the Holy Grounds Cafe, where congregants and staff are welcome to come talk to me. You as a congregation should recognize me, be comfortable in approaching me. Being the president of Holy Blossom Temple can at times feel like a daunting responsibility. But having fully immersed myself in the transition to get to where I am standing before you as president, I can assure you that I am excited and ready for the challenge. I know that I can't do it alone, nor will I try. A leader must know when to lean on others for their support and assistance. I am blessed to not only have a very strong board who are installed with me today, but as well a team of incredible vice presidents who will be with me every step of the way, not letting me falter, and giving more of themselves to make this new board even stronger than ever. To this board of directors, I confess that my vice is not red licorice, but dark chocolate, which I will have for you at all of our board meetings. Of course, without the support of our past president, Judy Winberg, Rabbi Splansky, my close friends who came to this installation today, my law partner, Susan, for all my work absences, I apologize in advance, my father, my husband, Mark, and our daughters, I would not even be in this honored position today. As we continue to read the book of Genesis, we see that God speaks to many biblical leaders at times of vulnerability. God tasks them with the job of transformation, and the response is often, Hineni. Hineni. I too am here, fully present in this moment, committed and engaged to accept the mantle of leadership around my shoulders, ready to go forth and continue the legacy of the incredible men and women who have led this congregation to date. I look forward to working with all of you in the sacred partnership. Shabbat Shalom.